Grené blankets and rugs were woven by the Sami since about 600 AD. The Sami used a warp-weighted loom made from tree branches. The warp and weft were of hand-spun wool or linen yarns. First, to make the warp, a header was woven to the top of the blanket to secure the warp ends. This band was woven on a small weaving reed and in a decorative pattern, and often colored yarns were woven for the band, depending on what was available. The braided header was then tied to the top of the warp beam of the loom, and the bottom ends of the warp were weighted down with rocks to secure the warp straight while it was being woven. I wanted to try to weave a similar style of rug, but I don't have a warp-weighted loom. So I came up with a method that I would be able to get a similar result in the end. First, I wove a blanket using hand-spun wool on my Fleur loom. Then I used a Sami style of weaving reed to weave the band. I will be using the cut ends from the warp of the blanket to weave into the band to incorporate the two together. I'm using a Bivy style of weaving reed that has been made by Storstalka in order to weave this band. The Bivy reed has two sets of holes rather than the standard one, and a set of slots. The bottom row of holes is intended to carry the ground weave in a band, and the top set of holes is normally threaded with just the pattern threads that are supplementary warp that create the pattern that sits on top of the ground weave. In this case, I'm weaving just a plain weave, so I've only threaded the bottom set of holes and the slots, and I've left this top set of holes empty. So I have threaded my reed, and then I have woven a couple of inches of plain band here just to set the width and the tension of the warp. I've then clipped the end of the band onto a board to hold it securely in place while I weave. I have placed the blanket onto the board as well and clipped it in place so that it holds it in place while I'm weaving. I've woven a few picks of the blanket already just to get this thing started. It's a bit tricky to get the first few threads in place, but once you get it going, it's fairly easy to work. So what I'm doing is I am picking up 3 threads from the blanket, and I will weave these into the next shed. So pull apart 3 threads, place them here, then I'm going to open up the shed like so. And the 3 previous threads that I have woven through, I'm going to weave these back this way, and then I'm going to also in the same shed put these in. But I'm only going to pick up 2 of these because one of these I'm going to hand sew later, because I think it just creates a more secure blanket if one of these is sewn in afterwards. So I pick up 2, I put it through the shed, I pull this close to here, hold on to that there, and then I pick these 3 up and I pull them through the shed, holding it tight, and then I change the shed. It's a bit difficult with this yarn because it's a bit thicker than I normally use for this reed, so it's a bit sticky as I'm working. I may be struggling here a bit, but it does work. I open the shed, pull tight the tension, and again give a good tug on these yarns so that it sits close to the edge of the blanket. And then I'm going to pick up 2 of these that I've already woven through, pull them back to the right, hold on to it with my thumb while I pick up the next 3 warp threads from the blanket to weave through. Again, change the shed, tighten the tension. Give these 3 warp ends a good tug to securely hold them in place close to the blanket, and weave 2 of them back through the next through the shed. Pinch them with your finger and then pick up the next 3 warp threads to pull through. Hold on to that, change the shed. Pull the tension tight. Give a tug on these 3 warp threads before you pull it back through the next thread. Pick up 3 warp ends, weave them through, change the shed. Give a firm tug on this, pick up 2, weave them back, pick up the next 3 new threads, and weave these through. Change the shed. And weave this through. I've just moved the camera over to the other side so that hopefully you can get a different view on this method of weaving. So here I have the last 3 warp ends that I've woven through, and I give them a tug on the left hand side of the warp. And then I take 2 of them and I pass it through the open shed. I pinch it here in place, and then I pick up 3 warp ends from the blanket and I pull these through the same open shed. Hold it in place, then I change the shed on the reed, tighten the tension, give this a tug, pick up 2 warp ends, feed them through the open shed, pinch it in place, and pick up 3 new warp ends from the blanket. And feed them through the open warp. Again, I change the shed. Tighten the tension. Pick up 2 of these, give these 3 threads a good tug, pick up 2, weave them through, and then pick up 3 from the blanket and pull those through. Hold, pinch that in place, change the shed again, and tighten the tension.